Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. There's a lot of things that you can say about former Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. But one thing you can't deny about him is the fact that he's tough. He took an absolute beating during his 18-year career and fought through it all. He played a game on Monday Night Football against the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2006 with a 104-degree fever. He didn't miss a single play during a 2010 game against the Baltimore Ravens after breaking his nose. He's played through high ankle sprains, sprained feet, concussions, and just about every injury under the sun. Roethlisberger is one of the toughest players in the over century-long history of the NFL, and no one would ever accuse him of being soft. That is, everyone except for this guy right here. This is Roethlisberger's former teammate, wide receiver Hines Ward. And in 2009, he decided to call out his quarterback for not playing in the team's absolutely critical Sunday Night Football game against the Baltimore Ravens. He said that Roethlisberger should have been tougher, should have played through his pain, and basically accused Roethlisberger of not being a leader and losing the locker room because he didn't play. Of all the people to say that about, why you would ever question Ben Roethlisberger's toughness is beyond me. But back in 2009, that's exactly what happened in a bizarre feud. This is the story behind the drama between Ben Roethlisberger, Hines Ward, and the 2009 Steelers. Before I talk about the comments and the controversy in question, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, and just how much it meant to Pittsburgh. It's November 29th, 2009, and we have an absolutely critical AFC North matchup on our hands between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Even if both of these teams were winless, this would still be a big game, because the Steelers and Ravens flat out hate each other, with that rivalry being one of the fiercest in all of football, especially back in 2009. But considering the circumstances, this was one of the biggest games of the entire season. For one, it was on national television on Sunday Night Football, which always raises the stakes when you're playing in front of the entire country. Number two, this was the first time that the teams met since the 2008 AFC Championship, with this being a rematch of the game that sent the Steelers to their 7th Super Bowl in franchise history. But most importantly, this game had massive implications on the playoff picture. Entering this game, the Steelers were sitting at 6-4, tied with the Jacksonville Jaguars for the number 6 seed in the conference. The Baltimore Ravens were sitting one game back at 5-5. If the Ravens lost this game, then their playoff hopes would be pretty much shot, barring a miracle. If the Steelers lost this game, then their grasp on the final seed would be lost, and it would be an uphill climb for them to make the playoffs. Anytime you have a game after Thanksgiving that has a direct implication on the playoff bubble for both teams, it is a big deal, and the whole country was watching to see who would come out on top in one of the biggest regular season games in the short but intense history of the rivalry. However, things were looking bleak for the Steelers entering this game, because for the first time all season, they were going to be without this man right here. Their signal caller, Ben Roethlisberger, was not going to be playing. At this point, Roethlisberger was having a solid season, and was actually having the best year of his career from a statistical standpoint. He was completing a very nice 69% of his passes, and was on pace to throw for 4,600 yards. And he was coming off of, statistically speaking, one of his best outings of the season. Even though the Steelers lost 27-24 in overtime to the Kansas City Chiefs, Roethlisberger completed over 76% of his passes while throwing for 398 yards and 3 touchdowns. But during this game, Roethlisberger suffered a concussion in overtime, which was the 4th concussion of his in the last 4 years. He was still feeling the lingering effects of the concussion, but he had every intention of playing in this critical game against the Ravens. I should note that this is 2009 we're talking about, so this is right around the time in NFL history and society where concussions became a serious issue, and where the general public was becoming more aware of what they were. As Roethlisberger said, it's part of the nature of the beast of playing this game. It's a violent physical contact sport, and there's a chance you're going to get hit. You guys don't talk about the bruises we have all over our body. If I showed you a bruise on my shoulder and a bruise on my shin, it wouldn't get talked about as much. It's a violent sport we play. Roethlisberger had no intention of sitting this game out. He was ready to play through the pain, even going as far as saying, "The doctors have taken about 1,000 tests, and I passed them all with flying colors." However, despite all of this, and despite practicing all week with the first string, the day before the game, Mike Tomlin ruled him out. Roethlisberger was still feeling the effects, and Tomlin felt that it was in his and the team's best interest to rest him and not potentially risk his career. For this Sunday Night Football game, and with their season on the line, the Steelers were going to ride with Dennis Dixon, with the former Oregon standout and 5th-round pick making his first career start. And the end result was, well, it was not that great. The game itself was a great back-and-forth affair, where neither team ever led by more than one possession. However, when the final whistle sounded, it was the Ravens who were victorious, thanks to a 29-yard field goal in overtime by Billy Cundiff to make the score 20-17. To date, this remains the most notable field goal that Cundiff has ever attempted in his career. As for how Dixon played, when the team needed him most, he crumbled hard. The numbers were not great, as he went 12 for 26 with 145 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a passer rating of 60.6, which was 38 points lower than what Roethlisberger had through his first 10 games of 2009. He went 4 for 16 from the second half on, and on his final 5 pass attempts of the game, he went 0 for 5, including 0 for 3 in overtime, with his last pass being a horrible pass over the middle into coverage that was intended for Santonio Holmes, but instead got picked up by Paul Kruger and was returned for 26 yards to set the Ravens immediately up in field goal range in the sudden death period. Dixon was thrown into an almost impossible situation. For your first ever start to be under the lights and on the road against the third best defense of football, and for you to not know until the weekend that you were going to be getting the nod, even though you barely practiced with the first team all week, is tough. But regardless, the Steelers were losers on this day, and their playoff hopes were now hanging by a thread. And after the game, a frustrated Hines Ward, who finished the day with 3 catches for 47 yards, lashed out to reporters about the loss. Because in his eyes, this never would have happened if Roethlisberger just sucked it up and played. Ward decided to use the post-game press conference to call his quarterback soft. The idea of calling out your teammate in the post-game press conference is going to raise eyebrows by itself. But to call out the guy responsible for getting you the ball for not playing, even though he had a concussion, even though he probably would have played if he wasn't overruled by a neurosurgeon, and even though he played through just about every single injury he's had, well, that's going to make headlines no matter what. Ward said that because of what Roethlisberger did, that he divided the locker room. As Ward said, this game is almost like a playoff game. It's almost a must-win. I could see some players or teammates questioning, like it's just a concussion. I played with a concussion before. It's almost like a 50-50 toss-up in the locker room. Should he play? Shouldn't he play? It's really hard to say. And if you think that's bad, don't worry. It gets worse. Because just like the Energizer Bunny, he kept going. Ward said, to find out that he's still having headaches and not playing, and it came down to the doctors not feeling that they were going to clear him or not, I've lied to a couple of doctors saying I'm straight and I feel good when I know that I'm not really straight. Before I go any further, I am going to say right now that I am in no way whatsoever defending what Hines Ward had to say. We're going to get into just how stupid those comments are in just a bit, and the rightful backlash that he got for putting his quarterback on blast, and for encouraging Roethlisberger to lie to medical professionals. However, in Ward's defense, the Steelers and the coaching staff did not exactly do the best job at communicating the situation, as they were sending some mixed messages. Remember, we were just starting to really learn about concussions and the science behind them, and how they impact football players. It was a completely different landscape from a player's safety perspective than today. The fact that Roethlisberger practiced during the week, and then was a last-minute scratch, probably left Ward thinking, what's going on? And it also didn't help that Roethlisberger was not inactive. He was in uniform and was the team's emergency number 3 quarterback, meaning that if Dennis Dixon and backup Tyler Palko got hurt, that Roethlisberger would be in the game. Obviously, that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. How is your starting quarterback not good enough to play, but he's good enough to suit up? He'll be just as hurt and just as concussed at 10 o'clock, regardless of whether or not Dixon and Palko get injured and can't go anymore. Tomlin didn't explain the reasoning to his team before the game, but he explained it to the press the day after the game, saying, "We spent so much time and energy throughout the week preparing both Roethlisberger and Dixon to play. We had no time to give anyone else snaps as a get-you-out-of-the-game quarterback. So if disaster happened, and 2 quarterbacks went down in the football game, we were going to have to put him on the field. and absolutely hand the ball off every single play. I had no other options. I didn't have time nor energy to provide snaps for a disaster quarterback. Again, if that message was communicated to Ward beforehand, that the only reason Roethlisberger was in uniform was because he's the only one on the team that knows how to hand the ball off, and he was never actually going to get hit or throw a pass, then that would have shut Ward up. So in some ways, I get why Ward thought that way, because the Steelers did not communicate this well at all, and this could have been a complete non-issue. Having said that, of all the people to question their toughness, you're going to question the toughness of Ben Roethlisberger? As though you think he wanted to miss this must-win game against your biggest rival in front of a primetime audience? Did you forget what you said 3 years before, prior to your 2006 game against the Jaguars, when Roethlisberger had a fever and emergency surgery to remove his appendix? Because you said, and I quote, he's going to do whatever it takes to play against Jacksonville. He doesn't like to miss games. Knowing Ben, he's going to be there for Jacksonville. Ben's a guy who's played with pain before. And sure enough, he played in that game. So what changed? This is like if in baseball, Cal Ripken Jr. decided that he needed the day off so he could recover from an injury, and someone called him out by saying that he should have played, and that he needs to learn how to suck it up and play through pain and play every day. Not the smartest move there. After receiving a ton of backlash, and rightfully so, Ward decided a few days later to apologize to Big Ben for the comments, saying that the two men talked, the talk was productive, and his comments were somewhat taken out of context. As Ward said, I would never question a man's toughness playing in a Steeler uniform. I didn't mean to cause such a stir. My frustration was based on the fact that this was a big game for us to stay in the playoff picture, and having been out there gave us our best opportunity to win. He then added that he never meant to cause a distraction, and said, in hindsight, we're never going to jeopardize a man's health issues to play a game. I wasn't trying to really not be concerned about his head injury. We were just frustrated we didn't have our starting quarterback. Roethlisberger accepted the apology, but did say that he was hurt by the comments, saying, I was just hurt more than anything else. We got over it, moved past it, and now we're preparing. On one hand, it seemed like water under the bridge, as both sides were ready to move on. On the other hand, it seemed like this incident did a ton of harm to their relationship. In 2010, when Roethlisberger was suspended for 6 games for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy, Ward said that the suspension was justified, and he did not defend his quarterback. And in 2019, Ward publicly called out Roethlisberger for his leadership style, saying that he needed to do more than just call out teammates on his radio show. So take that for what it's worth. Even though Big Ben and Ward are two Steelers legends, they never really had the greatest relationship in the world, as exemplified from this 2009 incident. However, the message from all of this is clear. Do not ever criticize someone for not playing through a concussion, and don't encourage players to lie to doctors about their status. It wasn't smart back in 2009, and it especially isn't smart today considering what we know. And if you are going to be dumb enough to call someone out for this, and call someone out for not risking their life and playing through an injury like this, don't call out literally one of the toughest players in the history of the NFL that has played through every possible injury, and somehow put together an 18-year Hall of Fame career despite having one of the most broken bodies in the world. Because even though it was Big Ben who was having head problems, back in 2009 when Ward made those comments, most of us who heard him speak wanted to know what was going on in his head. Get your official Jaguar 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.